Stanley's Northeast, our bacon sponsorship. Yay, bacon! Yay, yeah, exactly, especially for breakfast. Our sponsors here, Gabe Skelly of Skelly Video Productions, thank you for your production and support. Molly Nicholson of Molecule Marketing, thank you so much, Molly, at the table. And also Sterling Cross PR, Muddy Paws Cheesecake. Then you knew, I can't say that. I would rather say 514 Studios, the previous name, and make it MSP. I'd also like to thank our volunteers here this morning. That is also something super helpful that we need. So we are streaming live. If you are here, then maybe that's not necessary for you, but you may want to, in the future, or if you want to check an archive of it later, you can look for it on our social channels. Gabe has been doing this for how long, Gabe? Now I'm going to do the pregame show of Gabe. Gabe doesn't want to... 3 years, I say. Gabe doesn't want to talk out loud now that he's behind the camera. So who of us are here for the first time? A show of hands? All right. That is great. Thank you so much. Yes. We appreciate you coming. We do this every month, so we've done like 120 some of these, and we will continue to do them coming up here over the course of, upcoming months. So we appreciate that. Tell your friends, your colleagues, and that sort of thing. Speaking of what's coming up next, it will be December 20th. We will have Eric Hansen back here to talk to us about brands being social, building and nurturing an effective employer brand. Definitely look forward to that. If you're working within a corporate environment or an organization, I think that'll be very helpful for you. Registration is open now. That's what the slide says, so I hope it's true. Register now at smbmsp.org. All right, it is case studies. Case studies is a great month here. I'm going to hand off that to you, and I'm going to introduce, as I have to pull up the information on my screen. I am so sorry. All right, case studies number 1 with Cece Porter and Eric Husband of Fast Horse. They are going to talk to us about the beer that's in the back. I don't know if there's any better way I have to or want to say that. How Heineken tapped cultural moments to make zero alcohol beer cool. So like for those of you who are standing up here hosting an event in front of 100 and some people, yeah, you can take the go. For those of you who are hosting an event and don't want to babble and don't want to have an alcoholic beer in the morning, maybe there's people who don't want to do that. That is what these guys are going to talk to you about. So they'll do their presentation, and we will have a Q&A session after each of the 3 case study presentations. So I would say hold your questions, or they can take them in the flow if they want. But let's have a round of applause for Eric and Cece.
Thank you. And it's, Patrick, it's the placebo effect that helps in the morning. So we brought beers in the back. We're living the dream with bacon, bagels, and beer this morning. It's zero alcohol, so you can drive, you can go back to work. If you want, you can take one back and try it tonight, or you can switch to the regular stuff.
Literally less alcohol than a glass of orange juice, so you can really drink it right now.
All right, so we're going to be taking you really quickly through some of our case studies here on this beer. There's 3 activations we did this year, and we'll leave a little time for Q&A after, and then we'll look forward to hearing the rest of the case studies this morning. All right. Is it working?
There we go. I'll just be far from you.
Go ahead.
I'm Cece Porter. I'm a senior social strategist at Fast Horse, which means I work on social media all the way from the brainstorming, concepting phase with our creative team, all the way to execution, getting things out on channels, reporting back on results.
And I'm Eric Husband. My title is VP Integrated Creative Director, and I oversee creative and really sit sort of in between all of the disciplines that we do with social, paid, earned, and so on. All right, so we're Fast Horse. We're right down the street. You may have seen our building. We're about 3 blocks down. We're about 18 years old, and we've gone through several transformations like every agency. Some of our clients include Dunkin, of course Heineken and Dos Equis, General Mills, Deluxe, and more. And we really bill ourselves as an integrated creative agency. So Heineken, and this was like about 1 year ago today almost, we got a call from Heineken in White Plains, and said, we have this international launch of a beer that we've done in Europe, Heineken 00, it's alcohol-free. We'll get into a little bit of the details of the beer, but they were looking for ways to introduce the product into the US. They knew they were facing some challenges, and also just a much different market than their European market. And so they asked us to jump into a pitch. It was one of those where we literally had, I think, 3 weeks to get everything together, but it was one of those rare pitches that when you actually go in and show the work that you show actually lived to see the day eventually. And so sometimes we'll pitch and things morph and they evolve. In this case, a lot of the stuff really stayed true to our first pitch, and we'll walk you through some of that stuff today.
So there were 3 kind of key things that we had to think about through this process. First of all, one great thing that really differentiates Heineken 00 from the rest of the non-alcoholic category is that it truly has 0 alcohol. So a lot of others, like O'Doul's, for example, is one you might know, actually does have a little bit of alcohol. So this means that now you can actually drink a beer anywhere you want to. And since this first launched in Europe, there was a bunch of different challenges here in the US market. First of all, the beer drinking culture here is very heavily craft, very different from the Europe market. And then we also have kind of a binge drinking culture here as well, where non-alcoholic beers are typically seen for people who are like trying to get sober. And then we have this growing sober curious audience. So it's really small right now, but it is growing, and there are other competitors like Coors, and then like there's a craft athletic beer who are non-alcoholic beers coming into the category. So it was super important for us to make sure that we're tapping this audience and getting in front of them before our competitors do.
All right, so Now You Can is our creative platform, and this is actually an international platform, so you may see the hashtag around, but what the platform has done for us is it really sort of acts as a litmus test to the messages that we put out. And Cece just went through, now you can go pick up the kids and have a beer at happy hour before you do so. Now you can get a workout in after happy hour. Or in the case of some of these things here today, you'll see now you can bring beer where beer usually isn't supposed to go. And that was really the juxtaposition that we really played with in this whole campaign launch.
So that was the question we asked ourselves: where can you typically not bring beer that now we could go and bring beer? So one of the first places we thought about was in an office environment. Usually when you're in the middle of your workday, not cool to be drinking beer. And then while you're in the game, if you're trying to focus, if you're trying to win, you're probably not drinking a beer. And then when you're on call, that's a pretty big safety issue. You have people's lives in your hands, so probably not going to be drinking beer. And through those territories, we found 3 different moments in culture that we could activate around. So first of all, bring your child to work day, probably the most known work day where people actually bring their kids to show them what they do. And then the US Open, which is a long-standing partnership that Heineken had, and so we thought perfect place to bring 00 into the game. And then National First Responders Day, which is the day in the US where we celebrate our local heroes.
So we did, and we continue to look at these moments all year long. And the first one we looked at is I call it the bring your daughter to work day because I have 3 daughters, but bring your child to work day is probably the PC way to say that. But we really looked at, normally the water cooler situation is just that. It's water, it's coffee. We asked ourselves right after, literally the day after Bring Your Child to Work Day, what if we made it about beer? And we started to look at it. We knew it was going to be a very heavily social driven campaign, and we really started to look at, our lens for influencers really went from, I think, what you normally think of as influencers today in today's market, but also who else really embodies that idea of the office? Probably no surprise to anyone in the room, Angela and Brian. So introducing Bring Your Beer to Work Day with Angela and Brian and a host of others across the United States.
So we proclaimed April 26th, Bring Your Beer to Work Day, and then we literally brought beer to an office and surprised them with Angela and Brian. And so you probably know them from The Office, very popular show. And they kind of helped us extend this message of turning your workday into another possible drinking occasion. And then through social media content, earned media, and influencer content, we were able to really amplify that message nationally as well.
So we'll go back, we'll show you a video here. We literally ambushed this office. They had no idea what was coming.
Oh, play.
I wonder if we have to hit the space bar.
Why did we shop at this company today, Brian?
Because it's Bring Your Beer to Work Day. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hi.
I am Angela.
I am Brian.
And I saw him for the first time, I was like, no way.
It's Bring Your Beer to Work Day. This is Heineken 00.
It is alcohol-free.
Bring your beer to work day!
Was the day a hit? Absolutely, it was a hit.
So that was a shorter one, and we did a longer one, and we really could have. We joked that we could have actually probably shot like a 15-minute episode of The Office there, because they were effing with HR, and I mean everyone was really, they didn't know what to think at first, especially this HR guy. This poor HR guy was just like, really took a lot of shit from Brian and Angela, but. It was great, and we were able to capture live audio. We had like 3 or 4 shots where we were running around this office, but we were able to get real live reactions, and actually live reactions to the beer too. And so all of this content came out of this and was sort of what I always call like a fell swoop content grab. So we got social, we got paid out of it, and then earned. But everything cut from this 8 hours in this office building running around with Brian and Angela.
And so to amplify that on social media, we took small cut downs of those funny little moments and those times like where Brian literally hit the top of Angela's beer to make it foam over. So those cool little ad-lib moments that are great for short, quick, bite-sized social content, and use that for paid and organic social, adding in a little branding, of course, in that first 2 seconds.
And in something like this, we definitely script some of this stuff out, but we don't stick to the scripts once we get there. Obviously, Brian and Angela are funnier than we are. So we go in with scripts. We know what we have to get out of it, but really what happens that day, like the beer, I don't know what you'd call that, but stuff like that is just fun surprises that we help encourage, but it's just, you never know what you're going to come out of. And then when we get into edit, that's when sort of the magic happens and we find those moments that happened all day long.
And so Brian and Angela also posted across all of their social channels, from stories to Twitter. So a lot of engagement there as well. And then we also did a national digital sampling initiative. So fans who didn't actually get beer delivered to them from Brian and Angela could still get in on the fun, and tweet at Heineken so they could get their own sample and their cute little office memo package as well. And then we contracted a bunch of influencers as well to spread this message of being able to have a beer while you're working. So whether you're an entrepreneur working from home, or you're a DJ and you want to stay focused when everyone's on a night out, or you're a restaurateur and you're just taking a break from your job. And then we did get a lot of earned media coverage for this. We took Brian and Angela on a media tour. I think one thing that's really great about the way we captured the content, the surprising of this office was something that was interesting and fun and kind of clears that earned bar. So we really are getting a lot of content out of those 8 hours that we spent in that office. And then something that was also cool about media in this one was that even the journalists themselves were posting on their personal social media too, because they were so excited to see Brian and Angela or to get these office memos in their office.
All right, so now let's go from offices to staying sharp. Now you can stay sharp in the game. And as we said, Heineken's been a long-term sponsor of the U.S. Open, and this was a unique situation. New York's got really tough sampling laws. Like, we can't bring beer to the streets. With zero alcohol, that sort of changed things. So our recommendation to Heineken was like, let's take advantage of this and let's take the game of tennis from Flushing Meadows. Let's see what happens when we bring it to Manhattan and throw in Andy Roddick and Lindsay Davenport and serve up 150-mile-an-hour serves to people to see if they can return them with beer. So we called this the U.S. Open, the perfect serve.
So like Eric said, we settled on the perfect serve because it's really the only way to get both a great tasting Heineken and to be great as a pro at the U.S. Open. And so this year we gave New Yorkers a chance to experience that perfect serve both on and off the court, whether they were across the nation or actually at the Flushing Meadows attending the game. So we took over a tennis court near the Hudson River in a very high traffic area where fans could come in, sample Heineken 00, and take their best shot at a serve from Andy Roddick and Lindsay Davenport. If they were successful, they could actually win tickets to go to the U.S. Open. And so using content from that consumer sampling activation, we also conducted media interviews and then had content from influencers sharing that message as well across social channels.
So here's what happened, and it was pretty much exactly what you'd think would happen if you tried to return a fast serve.
My name is Andy Roddick. I used to play tennis. Will anyone please come and play with me?
We're out here today with Heineken 00 to serve up some U.S. Open tickets.
They have to return my serve. I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen.
We're going to make it as difficult as possible.
I have beer. Heineken 00.
Ready?
So there is a longer form video. We wanted to speed things along this morning, but as you can imagine, just tons of whiffs. But really, the media came out, and it was great because it was just a unique experience, and there were so many people who just wanted to get in there to see, like, could you return it? I faked one. I stitched together 2 shots and brought it back to the office, and I had them fooled for about 2 minutes.
We were super convinced. So for social content, both paid and organic, we created a few little cut downs from the content that we captured at this consumer activation. One, kind of comparing the things it takes to have a perfect serve from Andy Roddick against the things it takes to have a perfect serve as a Heineken 00. And then we created a longer form IGTV video, which was the first one that Heineken had on their channels. And then we also did a fails video because, of course, the internet loves to see people fail. And then we came up with a few fun, engaging things because the US Open is a big moment in culture and it's super timely. We wanted to make sure that we were jumping in on conversations that were already happening on Twitter. So we captured these really fun little GIFs and actually went in and monitored for hashtags, tweets from the US Open, all of those things to make sure that we're jumping into those and then replying back from Heineken with these cool GIFs. And then we created a GIF game and put it on Facebook where we had about 45 people actually screenshot their results to try to win the GIF game.
So that GIF game, you had to actually return the serve by trying to stop it at the right spot.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, across our celebrity social, they shared the content that we captured there. And then Andy Roddick also earlier in the week helped us drive fans to that consumer activation with a tweet kind of leading to the fact that he would be in New York giving people the chance to return his serve. And then for influencers, you might recognize some of these people if you watch The Bachelor or Bachelorette. We had them actually come down to that consumer activation court and take their chance at Andy Roddick's serve. And then they also attended the US Open in the Heineken suite. So they were posting from both the US Open and throughout that consumer activation. So very fun content and a lot of engagement there. And then for media coverage, we actually used that longer form video that you saw up front to pitch to media. And they came down to the consumer activation as well to capture some of their own content, but we got a lot of online coverage and then also got some print as well.
And if, in case you're wondering, a few people did return a serve, but Andy and Lindsay went really easy on them at one point. When they were going full on, it was just, even tennis sort of wannabe pros that day, you could see were just humbled walking off the court. Okay, so now on to like serious things, people on call who are saving lives. We had to be careful with this one because we didn't want to, we had a range of ideas, and some of them we pushed probably too far initially in that, we didn't want to ever appear that we were taking people who are on the streets, men and women, saving our lives and putting them in sort of danger or obstructing their ability to do the job. And honestly, we didn't want to also give this impression that the pilot on your next plane ride should just grab a beer in front of you and drink. So anyone on call for us there was a right or a wrong way to do it. We actually tapped into a doctor who we thought was really perfect for this, Ken Jeong. And you probably recognize Ken Jeong from shows now, but we thought Ken would be a perfect guy because he's a doctor and he understands when doctors should or should not maybe have an alcoholic beer or a alcohol-free beer.
So we activated around National First Responders Day, which is on October 28th. And we basically extended an alcohol-free toast to our first responders since they typically can't be doing a toast while they're on call. And so to extend this nationally, we encourage fans to thank their local heroes and actually gave them a free sample of Heineken 00 as well to do that. And then we worked with, of course, real-life doctor and comedian Ken Jeong, who you probably know from The Hangover or
Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah, or The Mask right now. And he actually did a special delivery of Heineken 00 to real-life first responders. And then we created a series of video content from that went across social channels and Ken's social channels. And then we amplified that with a media tour and then with influencer content as well.
He's awesome.
Dr. Ken, code 00, over.
Roger that, on my way. You know the best way to celebrate National First Responders Day for those on call? Beer, the alcohol-free kind. Happy First Responders Day!
Hey!
Oh, sweet ride. Check out mine. The only problem, I have to be my own siren. Woo! 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 Emergency beers for emergency first responders. Let's get this highly responsible alcohol-free celebration started. Which would you prefer? A thank you hug or a thank you beer? Let's go get a hug there.
So Ken is awesome. Like everyone we worked with was great, but like Ken was just like this really sincere, obviously funny guy, but his heart and soul really is with these first responders. And so he was just so natural, and we just took him around to stations, and everyone just reacted really well, but he really played up the beer. And I think the art and science with a guy like Ken is like, he didn't play the beer up so hard that we felt like everyone felt like they were in this commercial. And of course, we had to cut ads that went into paid, but we really just tried to keep it fresh and keep it surprising. And he was the perfect guy to work with, and really appreciative. Like he kept thanking us, and we're like, thank you. We're paying you, and you're doing our work.
I think what was cool about this too is that we had scripts, and that through that scripting process, he actually gave feedback and was part of that because he obviously has this great sense of humor, and so group is that Kevin is actually a firefighter. And so it was great to see him talk about how the night before a shift at the station, he actually doesn't drink alcohol at all. So 00 is really a solution for him personally so that he could enjoy a beer with dinner, out on the patio, whatever, without compromising the commitment that he has to his job.
Like us this morning.
Yeah. And then we also included Astrid, his fiance now, and then Jason and Blake are also his friends. So they actually thanked him in some of their posts, which really showed our fans the kind of engagement that we were looking for in thanking a first responder that's close to you. And then for media coverage, Ken was just amazing on his media tour, and talked a lot about his personal experience of being a doctor, and how this initiative is really important to him. So we got a lot of great coverage there. And throughout the year thus far, we've gotten 1.46 billion total earned in social media impressions. I'll caveat that too with the US Open, because it was a long-standing partnership and there was some like out of home and some other paid media in that is inclusive of all of those efforts.
And this next slide is really, and this is just something we, at Fast Horse, we like to say everything works harder by working together. And this is, I think a lot of us like to work this way, but we really truly, this is our integrated model, but at the middle there you see an integrated team lead. Sometimes we call account at other agencies, but really all of the disciplines surrounding that. What we like to do is we like to travel along together with every project instead of an assembly line. That strategy hands it over to creative hands it over to media, and strategy, like we're in the thick of it all together. And so this model really, for us, really is a unique way for us to, ideas come from everywhere. I think, creative teams can certainly come up with lots of great ideas. I think a lot of the ideas here today it was groupthink, and it was group iteration, and it was sitting at the walls looking at stuff together. And I think for us, it's just the only way to work. I don't think we'd have things like Twitter sampling, bring your beer to work day, just that thought, someone throwing that out. And I think we all love to work that way now. But this was a look at our model and kind of what we look at it, how we bring these things to life, so they don't just sit in one discipline, or they don't just sit in one sort of myopic way of looking at how we can bring something to life.
And I think for a lot of these too, we are working with an integrated agency team. So a lot of other agencies like paid media, different disciplines are working with us through this too. And so having that model already internally really helps us wring the most out of those relationships for clients as well.
Cheers.
Prost.
All right. Thank you. Let's hands up for questions. I will come around with my. All right. It's like what's her face from UPI. I always get the first question to Charity. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk tactically about what you guys did for video ads, and maybe this is specific to Heineken because you have the awareness level that you do. But when you're looking at that branded first few seconds, how do you decide? Yep, in that first 3 seconds, we're going to show the product, the logo, versus having a more native kind of hook of a story? Where do you balance that?
Oh man, we talk about this so much, and we fight about it.
So that that little lockup in the front of each of the videos, that is actually like a Heineken branding mandate sort of for 2019. We've worked a little bit with their current community management, I think AOR agency, Publicis, on how that could evolve for 2020, where you're actually seeing some of the video instead of like a navy blue or white background as you come into it, and just shortening it up a little bit so that it doesn't add length to the video. But it is a nice way to get that branding in there early. But for organic,
aside, we don't fight about it, but we bring it up like you just did, because I think Publicis, Italy, I think originally created this with Amsterdam, and their international brand standards have that lockup that Cece just explained. And I think one of the things we often ask ourselves and really sometimes push back to the client is saying, especially in social, the more it comes off as like some paid programmatic banner, the more you could maybe not get that viewership. At the same time, I think on the flip side of that coin is if you get your brand up front, you can get that brand, everything from household penetration to awareness. So I think we try to walk that fine line. Obviously, we have international rules that we play with, and I think we're always sort of pushing to go, how can we keep it more organic? And I think as I was stressing about like keeping it less, more ad-lib, the content, that is one of the reasons we don't want to come off as an ad. So it's a good question.
Yeah, I think for paid media, it works really well. But for organic, like you saw with US Open, we have been trying to push a little bit on more of the GIFs or IG stories or IGTV, where those places shouldn't have that branding right away. So as we kind of evolve and push some more of those things, I think we'll get.
And when we go out to the media, we will create maybe like a 1.5 minute B-roll of like sort of the best of this stuff. And if that has a lot of branding in it, they're not gonna cover it. So what usually happens is someone like a Ken Jeong or Andy Roddick or something might have the beer with them, and it naturally leads into the conversation. But we have to be careful about making it look like a commercial.
More questions? While I walk over there, how long is it from like lead time to the beginning of execution on a project like this?
Not long enough.
Never long enough.
Never long enough.
This, yeah, so like I said, like this last year at this time we were pitching these ideas. We probably didn't know until maybe February what exactly we're going to do. We were working in planning. But, I would say some of these are just not long enough because we deal with contracts, finding the right talent. We don't like to say this too much, but that Bring Your Beer to Work Day came together in 6 days. And normally we'd probably plan that for like 6 to 8 weeks, but we really didn't have the building. We love that we could pull it off in 6 days, but at that point, you start to get nervous about compromising. There's a lot of stuff that has to go right on that shoot day, and there's a lot of planning for all the amplification that happens after. So it was a quick one.
And I think the production timeline too is always just intense and insane. It's like 2 days of turnaround to get assets to media, to get them out on social. So we move very quickly.
There's been a lot of, overnight edits just, where we've been up for 48 hours just cutting this stuff because we just literally, we go from shoot to them doing a media tour and we have to have this stuff ready.
We can take one more if there's one more. All right, and I will try not to preempt your question on the way over here.
Yes, all good. We're part of the same team, just learning and whatnot. So I just got a quick question. So with a campaign this size, and I know that you said that you had like 1.46 billion impressions, how else do you measure the effectability or like the effect that it has on your target markets, especially with like Europe and America, how the cultures are fairly different in the relationship with drinking? How'd you go about that?
So I think the biggest thing with a lot of these campaigns is that sampling component, since this is a brand new product in the US and we're trying to get it in front of people before competitors do, always making sure there's a national sampling play for people to get that product in their hands, super important. And then I think when we're looking at content on social or influencer content, engagement is a huge piece, that engagement rate, and view through rate is another KPI that we're usually measured on for paid.
Yeah, and then ultimately sales. And so right now this beer is doing it's surprising a lot of people both in Amsterdam and in America in that we know there's a sober curious growing audience, but the sales is really the ultimate metric. Sales are great. It's probably it's the number one beer now in their portfolio, not in volume, but in growth. And I think Heineken and others are seeing this market now as this emerging market. And there's other metrics that we were just in New York last week talking about household penetration, and there's all sorts of metrics, but like what Cece said, sampling is huge because a lot of times, drinking this product is believing, and if you try it, it tastes like a Heineken beer, and they really worked hard to make it taste like that beer, and so every metric along the road, that whole line is being looked at now.
All right, thanks a lot. Again, a round
Thank
of applause for Eric and Cece. If you guys have more questions and want to talk to them, they will be available afterward as well. You can ask them one-on-one. Definitely appreciate that. I can confirm that it does taste like Heineken, and there's samples in the back. I definitely encourage you guys to take some. As we get set up for our second case study, Mickey Nelson, who is the Director of Public Relations for Space 150, is going to talk to us about Call of Duty. Mickey is a strategist there focusing on social content and earned media strategies, worked with brands such as 3M, and while we get his screen all set up, definitely appreciate you guys coming in today, asking great questions. I don't always give charity the first question, like Helen Thomas at a White House news conference, but that is how it's worked out. So let's have a round of applause for Mickey Nelson.
Hello. Is this on? How's it going? If anyone was here for the purpose session that was originally advertising, I'm going to do something absolutely on the opposite end. I'm going to talk about memes for a violent video game. This is a super dramatic title, but what we're really talking about here is how do we create cultural conversations for a video game. Here we launched Call of Duty Modern Warfare from Activision at the end of last month, and it was super fun. Bear with me. There we go. Just a little agency plug. I work with Space 150. We are an independent advertising agency here in Minneapolis with offices in New York and LA. This is smooth. We're really going well. Am I just going to have to stand over here? Our mission is destroy convention to create demand. That's a little about us and a lot about our clients. We look to push the envelope in order to make results happen for our clients. Okay, we make content, products, and experiences for brands like 3M, Nike, Activision, and a whole host of others, and we have a lot of fun. God, this is terrible. Okay, let's talk about memes. Everyone here knows what a meme is, right? But it's a image or video that spreads itself across the internet, and we all sort of have a collective laugh about it. Jesus. Okay, so here was the situation. As I said, we launched Modern Warfare at the end of last month. Do we have any gamers in the house? All right, I see you. So in the lead up to launching a video game, you drop like the beta, you drop a lot of the sort of behind the scenes with our streaming influencers, but while we were getting rave feedback from the gaming community, the broader internet hadn't yet caught on to what we were trying to do. So our ask was really, how do we own the cultural conversation outside of our core gaming audience? How do we get the internet excited about Call of Duty, because gaming is culture and culture is gaming, and that's what we do. This was so much smoother before. So memes and meme accounts are really cultural currency. When we're thinking about doing this campaign, it's all about, how do we create conversation? And right now, to create conversation, it's about sharing memes, and it's about these places we go on the internet that become water cooler talk. Oh my God. But as we all know in this room, how do you become a meme without becoming a meme yourself? How do you create a meme without, just getting roasted on the internet? So our campaign was really about activating these popular meme accounts to create this groundswell of conversation about Call of Duty, to make it feel like a much larger moment in the broader internet than it maybe actually was or actually could have been. So we wanted to reach these hard to reach people who are online, who maybe aren't tied into all the Reddit threads and watching all the streams on Twitch, but are just regular people who may be casual gamers. literally every time. So we work with 3 partners doing things, fuck Jerry, and I'm sorry for the swear, and IMGN. These are networks of meme accounts who have a huge presence online. Any meme that you see is typically fueled by these networks. Okay. All right, we'll get there. So meme accounts are their humor accounts. They have a huge following, and what I like about them is that not only do they have reach, but they also speak fluent internet. They are funny. They're not just sort of lifestyle characters. They are people who can actually create on the internet. Next slide. So when we were thinking about this campaign, it was really sort of a hybrid approach. How do we sort of tap into their creativity and their knowledge of the internet while also taking advantage of their reach and knowing that legal is not necessarily going to let them just go wild with what they would like to do probably. So we started off by seeding in-game imagery. It was a way that legal felt comfortable with putting something out there and allowing these meme creators to sort of play with the wording, but without losing a lot of control on what the visual actually was. The other goal with this was, can you go back? Sorry. The other goal with this was, how do we plant a cultural marker as we start this campaign? So night vision is something that everyone sort of understands, everyone sort of gets immediately, and it's something that ties to the game. You think about how Netflix launched Bird Box, right? You had the people doing the Bird Box challenge, and we didn't want to go that far, but we did need to sort of set up what this game was all about and create some, just sort of cultural reference points. From there, we expanded into more humorous content in the week leading up to launch that would allow us to bridge into people actually playing the game once the game dropped. So then scaling it into incorporating video of people actually playing the game and memes around people playing that game. So between the Space 150 team and these meme accounts, we sort of let them run wild on the static imagery while we took the video that was going to be maybe a little bit more provocative if we would have let them do what they wanted. I don't know. I probably would have liked to see that. But we did some good videos. So if you want to hit the next slide and just hit yeah. So yeah, you get the picture. We overall saw 52 million impressions in a 1 month period, saw a 12.6% engagement rate, which is almost 4 times the industry standard. We had 90 assets living across 30 plus accounts, and 7 of those videos you saw each got a million views apiece. When I think about takeaways, really identifying a cultural marker, whether you have a creative campaign, something that people can root themselves in and sort of have, I guess, a framework to understand what you're trying to do. Collaboration is a buzzword, I apologize. But it really is, I think Fast Horse mentioned it as well, when you can work with influencers, understand that they bring a ton of value in understanding who their audience is, understanding how to best communicate with that audience, and then bring your message to them in a way that's flexible. That's when the magic happens. And then I think creatives really have to be involved. Our team was working hand in hand with these meme folks, and it required a certain level of, I think, taste and craft that, and you may disagree with what those videos were, but they really were able to distill what our brand was trying to get across, and then how that comes to life on those platforms. So that's it. I breezed through that. Yeah. Hey.
Was there paid spend behind these?
There was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Easy enough. Next question. All right.
Okay, so when you're working with the content creators, how do you bridge the gap of like how people talk about the product on the internet and how legal wants it, like Call of Duty, R-Ball, Modern Warfare, video game, like all that stuff?
Totally. Yeah, that was something that we really needed to navigate because people don't want to interact with content that has the R-Ball and a ton of brand messaging. So I think we set some parameters with our creators in terms of these are no-go topics, and then we were very clear, I guess, in our brief of what was off limits, and then what are some general frameworks. So the night vision, the camouflage, those are things that we could ensure were sort of consistent across creator, and then knowing that they couldn't touch other things, and then us controlling the video versus giving them static was just sort of how we navigated. And obviously we needed to take a couple things down at a couple points, but for the most part it was streamlined.
We definitely have time for a couple more. Anybody else?
You mentioned industry averages or standards for engagement rate. What do you use to base that number on?
Those are Activision's, sort of core gaming metric in terms of engagement. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah. I'll start here, and then I'll go over, and those will be the last two.
Just wondering if you can take us behind the scenes a little bit on with the creators and your creatives on any of those, like how much push-pull was there, who was involved in the decisions of how to actually execute?
Yeah, so on the videos, we made all those videos, and the creators work as sort of producers on that then, saying, here's our idea, can you tweak it, or dogs and babies on the internet are obviously huge. So like that dog was a trained dog who would howl, and we just got him to howl whenever someone died. So it wasn't, it was a lot of sort of collaborative, but in terms of the videos, those were really sort of driven by us, written by us, and then tweaked based on who that creator was. Totally. Yeah, definitely the water bottle thing, that was totally ad-libbed, but.
Side question, that dog probably needed its own care dog to deal with its inability to...
It couldn't deal, yeah.
I'm wondering what you found out was the lifetime of any of these memes, because you see them in politics and news and whatever, and they seem to last forever. Were yours much shorter time, and did you control that anyway? Or
well, what was interesting is, they do have a shelf life for sure. And to Maggie's question, we were putting some paid spend behind some, but what was interesting was when you look at Daquan or some of these big meme accounts, there are a ton of other ones who want to be just like them. So all of a sudden you have people that you're not paying creating things on your behalf that are exactly like the creative that you have in yours, because they're just trying to ride that wave. They see that, Fuck Jerry or whoever is creating these things, and they want to be just the biggest big part of it. So it becomes a little bit more of a cultural moment, just because you're fueling these people who are the epicenter of where that humor culture comes from.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mickey. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. As Josh gets set up, introducing Josh Broughton. This mic is so much hotter than I expected it to be. The CEO of Brandish Insights. We've talked about beer, and then we've talked about Call of Duty. Now we're going to talk about brand building, which, if you're in the corporate world, is just as important. So appreciate that. Appreciate you, Josh, and give Josh a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to be talking a little bit today about why video series might just be the next big thing in brand building. And I'm going to have better luck. I'm going to have better luck. So podcasting is really hot right now, right? Who's got a podcast? Anybody got a podcast? Who listens to podcasts? Who's thinking about it? Who's got a client who says, I want a podcast, right? I love podcasts too, but I think they're kind of distracting us from something that's been growing and continues to grow, and that's video, right? But what about video? And so I think, there's all sorts of stats that I think are really interesting. So this one, by 2022, online video will make up 82% of all consumer internet traffic, 15 times higher than it was in 2017. So 2 years ago, it was at some level, and then 5 years from now, it's going to be at, even 15x. That means right now it's like 12x, right? I don't know. Do the math. But it's really big. It's getting bigger. Viewers retain 95% of information on video compared to 10% of text, and so that's interesting. I don't know what the equivalent is on audio. I'm sure it's closer to video there. 72% of customers would rather learn about a product or service via video, and then also 59% of execs said that they'd rather learn from a video than reading text. And I think that's especially important in a B2B capacity, which I'm in. And so, I'm thinking about all these different factors. And video, though, is usually, or it can be, and for those of you who have tried, it can be expensive, right? You got to get all sorts of equipment. Just ask Gabe over there. And you have to get, that's a barrier to entry. And it can be difficult, not just getting things right creatively, but all the production value. I mean, those first two case studies that you saw with those brands that nobody ever heard of, I'm sure that the cost and the difficulty alone would be prohibitive for most brands to do that type of video, right? And then lastly, it's time consuming. It takes a lot of time to script out video, do video, get the lighting, get the shot, get the editing, do this. Even if you're that's why podcasting is so easy right now, because everybody can just do podcasts and you just record some audio on your phone or whatever, slap it on some sort of podcast network, and you're out there. So that's why I think video continues to be a barrier for a lot of people. But that's why I'm going twice as quickly as I'd like here. But that's why marketers are exploring video series, because I think this is where people are seeing that there's this big shift in content consumption, moving from all of these kind of one-off, I'm going to be walking into the office videos, and look at me sitting at my desk with my big earphones that that nobody would ever actually see if you're sitting and talking to me face to face. And they're finding that a lot of these things don't scale, but what does scale is episodic content. And so just like with podcasts, a lot of the effort is in creating the concept and creating the thing, right? The thing itself, and then it's more of a container, not a deliverable. and then you can kind of continue to produce the same thing over and over and over again. So that's kind of where video series represent this new, really amazing opportunity. And you see brands, you see them popping up all over the place. They seem like they kind of stand out, a little one-off, but more and more you'll start to see them all over the place. So Wistia, how many people have seen Brandwagon? Amazing. You all have to check it out. It's really good. It's a talk show for marketers, and it's produced at the same kind of production value as you would see on daytime TV or an evening show. Shopify Studios, they're doing some really amazing things with storytelling and documentaries. And then right now, MailChimp is like, they're going like, it's like an arms race for them. They have like a dozen plus fully scripted short stories, series, documentaries, all sorts of things that they're trying to get people interested in. And what they're trying to do is say, you know what, we're moving post, let's interrupt you while you're at your desk type of YouTube type of stuff. We're moving to when you're at home, when you're washing dishes, when you're on the treadmill, if you're going to listen to a podcast, why not just watch something, right? And they're kind of taking that same idea and moving into episodic content. So, by the way, I probably should have said, my name's Josh. I am the CEO of Brandish Insights. You can see me there. I'm also an occasional marketing consultant for fun projects. I've worked in-house and for agencies throughout town here. And the most important thing for context is that I'm building a company that's focused on brand measurement and growth. You don't usually hear people talking about measuring brand. It's kind of two different things. And so for us, it's been an interesting journey to try and get our perspective out there. And so we don't have a lot of time, money, effort. We're trying to get this new thing off the ground. And so, but we still need a content strategy. And so this is kind of like a bootstrapped B2B perspective on how to kind of make a video series. And that's kind of like the case study here. So the case study itself is around our video series called Marketing is Broken. And I'm going to switch over to YouTube for just a second and play you like a minute. Oh. I've got to do the right source.
Something we all do from time to time. Hello, and welcome back, my broken viewers.
Nope.
I'm not supposed to call you that on camera. Losing control. It's something we all do from time to time. And while the internet is full of perfect models of self-discipline and restraint, sometimes we're actually not in control of our experience. But when consumers have no control over their experience with your marketing, they feel scared, powerless, or maybe even angry. That translates to fewer sales. And the worst part is, you might not even know it's happening. Thankfully, copywriter and marketing strategist Rob Marsh joins us today to tell us about all the unfortunate things that can happen when your website breaks the flow of your sales message and how you could do a better job guiding your users. If your website experience is more choose your own adventure than carefully crafted tour de force, then flip to page 33 now to take the mess out of your messaging.
And so it goes on from there. So it's a show that looks kind of like one of your, talk soup or your Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, kind of like your basic internet show. But it's for marketers, and that's our concept. And so with this video series, because this is the only thing, this is almost one of the only things that we do for our marketing and content strategy, because it's got to do all of the things for us. So this video series, it is the anchor of our content strategy. It involves our community and influencers. It helps us build an ad inventory. It grows our sales pipeline, and it builds our brand. And I'll show you how we have kind of overworked it to kind of do a little bit of each of those. So first of all, as the anchor of our content strategy, essentially we want to get a lot of things out there in terms of what we believe around brand measurement, how to grow brands, brand awareness, brand familiarity, and how that all ties back to measurability, performance marketing, things like that. And so we have a lot of different topics that we've picked out in our editorial calendar, which you can kind of see is all the way up there. And then to the, little to the side of that, you can see that's one of our episodes kind of content strategies. And I don't know if any of this interests you. It's all mine, so I can share whatever I want. And so I figured, if you want to see some of these artifacts or how we organize things, I'm more than happy to share. I have full permission from the client. So you can also see that, it feeds our LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube strategies, and it is the core of our blog strategy too. So basically, we publish everything everywhere. We typically like to post natively to every platform because every platform, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, seems to kind of favor content that's posted natively on their own platform and doesn't make you leave. LinkedIn right now is one of my favorite platforms for video. It's one of the only platforms for organic reach, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen as well. But when you post, this is one of the things that I see a lot of people do, tons of people that I respect too. They take their video content and they post it on YouTube, and then they post from it they post to YouTube from LinkedIn. And to get more organic reach, post natively to LinkedIn because LinkedIn wants the video content on LinkedIn, not going to YouTube. So that's just one little organic algorithm tip for you on LinkedIn. Little meta there. So that's our content strategy, and basically that's all we do, and that's like our little dance step. It's kind of like getting dance lessons for weddings for people that can't dance. It's not a lot, but it does the trick, and it fills our content calendar. We do one episode a week, and we produce every week. We take a few weeks off, but we produce every week. Also, so this is a great way for us to involve our community. What we're doing around brand measurement is new, it's unusual, and so we are looking to try and meet a lot of new people, try and tell them what we're doing around that area, and so that's where influencer marketing comes into play. When you have when you're trying to get on other people's shows and podcasts, it can be really difficult because it's like, hey, I want to be on your show, and they're like, well, what do you have? It's like this game of arbitrage, right? And so we have a show, and so I can reach out to people and say, hey, do you want to be on my show? Most people want to be on shows. And so it's pretty easy to reach out to people and appeal to their vanity and say, hey, you're cool. And I have a low threshold. I think a lot of people are interesting, and so I read about them. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. So I can genuinely reach out and ask people, I would really like to ask you about these things and have you on the show. And it'll take 15 minutes via Zoom, and here's the topic, and we'll send you 3 questions ahead of time, and create a really, really low bar, really like very little friction for them to say yes. And I think we've had about a 90% acceptance rate for people being on the show. And it ranges from everybody from people in town here that you might know, like Jen Havice and Lee Oden, big names, all the way to people like Omer Malad, who is from Australia, is the CEO of an awesome software platform called Vervo, Fodi Panagiotokopoulos from Greece, who's building growthmentor.com. I'm meeting so many cool people, and they're all being on the show, and they're expanding my network a lot. So I wouldn't have that type of access to people if it weren't for Marketing is Broken. The next thing, and this is something that I'm really excited about, so social, organic, and paid, they're always fractured, almost always fractured, and they never get a chance to collaborate on a level that is as powerful as what I think is happening here. So most ad platforms will let you bid on engagement, right, and then retarget off of that engagement. That is pretty much how TV's worked always, right? Because you pay for awareness and then you go for activation around the stores instead. You go to activation for the stores. Forgive me, I'm still kind of working through how I describe some of this, but we've spent $1,000 in the last year to promote the show to like super senior marketer level people that cost really expensive CPC, clicks on LinkedIn or anything like that. And we've managed to reach them all for 3 cents a piece, and we have about a watch rate of about 50%. So doing some math, I think I've calculated it's about 100 days worth of watch time for about $10 a day. So I've paid like the equivalent of one person to sit in front of the TV for 100 days for $10 a day. Pretty good, right? And the best part about that is for $1,000, I've cookied some of the most senior leaders in marketing for my retargeting efforts now for further down the funnel. And this is where I think people are still really, really in the infancy of using creative and upper funnel, like entertaining, educational, engagement content as the ad inventory. Don't go get ads and try and interrupt people, cookie people with really entertaining content, because you can do this for 3 cents a view versus $3 a click. And the economics of this are truly mind-bending, because I have access to people that I couldn't afford to access if I was just simply trying to advertise them directly on B2B, LinkedIn advertising or something like that. And then the last thing or not the last thing, the second to last thing is helping us grow a sales pipeline. Oftentimes we say we have to do these things for upper funnel, right? It's for growth, it's for thought leadership, it's for expertise, brand building. This is actually for sales. And so we have, at a certain point, we got to having guests on the show where, somebody like Lee Oden, the CEO of Top Rank Marketing in town here, once you have Lee and once you have Chris Savage, the CEO of Wistia on your show, you can kind of get most people to join on the show. And so what we've done now is, for Brandish Insights, our sweet spot are B2C venture-backed startups who are growing new categories. So restaurant delivery, scooters, direct-to-consumer, clothing and gift boxes and stuff like that. That's our sweet spot. And there's only so many of them because there's not many. I mean, there's probably only like 50 to 100 companies that have received double-digit $1 million in the last year in these categories, right? So we have a tiny, tiny, tiny little market that we're going after, but they've got lots of money, and that's a market that, it's a great product market fit for what we do. And so we've got a list of about 100 people that we've super researched. We're not talking about account-based marketing where I'm just getting lists of 1,000 people at a time and just churn and burn. We're talking about my golden 108 leads that I want to work and go after in 2020. So the play is pretty simple. I go into LinkedIn Navigator and I connect with them, and in the connection request I say, hey, you want to be on my show? I think what you guys are doing at said company is awesome. You want to be on my show? And so far I've got about a 2/3 connection rate, which if anybody's doing outbound on LinkedIn, tell me if 2/3 connection rate sounds good. It's fantastic, right? And so then instead of having to do content strategy and then do sales research, I'm actually combining the two. And so I was just looking at a company called Notarize. There was this really cool law that passed in Virginia in 2011 that allowed for you to actually get notary done through an online format. So before that, you couldn't verify your identity through video, but Virginia passed some law in 2011, and then Notarize jumped on that bandwagon and said, well, let's use the Virginia statute to offer nationwide notary services online. Super cool, awesome story, and so we wanted to talk to him about that, right? And so we found the director of marketing at Notarize. We've connected with him. He's scheduled to be on the show on December 3rd, and before we did that, we also did a sample brand study. And so the thing in the bottom there is one of our brand studies that we've done, just a little snippet report that we did, and we actually featured Notarize. So now we've actually done a little bit of research that people will find interesting on the show, but also it shows that we've done some research and we can provide some value. There's a little bit of the product already there for Ryan. We're going to send all of the content to him. You can see we usually send an email. We tell them the format. We send them the questions. We send them all the details, their name, title, company, URL, preferred gender pronouns, example of a recent show. We want to make sure everybody feels like they're a great guest on our show, super prepared, really well taken care of. And then finally, we have our little Zoom call. So by the time we have our Zoom call with our sales prospects, we're friends, we're on the show, we know things about their company. We've sent them questions about an interesting thing about their company. We've sent them a report that features their company, that features our services, and we haven't even asked them if they're interested in the product yet. So that's again, it's something where we have to make the show work as hard as we can because there's only we're bootstrapping and then there's only 3 of us. And ultimately, it's helping us build a brand. So in the last couple of years, we've been fortunate to work with 3M, FSC, Lime, Foodsby, Donate Life, Bite Squad, Unrestrict Minnesota, Michigan Lottery, all sorts of really, really cool brands. And we're not a agency that has been around for 18 years. We're 2 years old, and we're still trying to figure out what we're doing. So by all accounts, I think we're doing fairly well, and things like the show, Marketing is Broken, has really helped kind of do all of those things for us. A couple of takeaways that we have. Number 1, concepts are key. And so take your favorite show, and just say, I want that for this. Right? We're at the point where there's so much content that creates anxiety. If I click play and I don't know what I'm getting, it's almost too much, right? If I know I click play I've got 10 minutes and I know it's the same 10-minute format every time. It's like, great, I know what that's like. So find a concept and stick with it. Time box or burnout. Our shows, every show that we do, we've got an 8-hour time box, including writing, editing, filming, producing, guests, interviewing, all that type of stuff. And if you try and make it perfect, we'll just burn out. And so we've got a time box of 8 hours a week. And then we iterate around the rough edges. Every time we produce something, we look at it and we're like, oh, that part was crap. And so the next week we try to iterate and make that part a little bit better. Level up where you can. We started off me reading my phone and standing in front of a bookshelf. Since then we've gotten a green screen, we've gotten 4K cameras, we've gotten mics, we've gotten lights. And it's just every time we get more success from the business, we invest more in the show because it creates a moat and it helps us become a little bit better and a little bit better. And then lastly, don't be surprised. We started this show because we thought it would be like, this great content strategy approach for getting new business. And we have learned so many different things about video production. We've met so many cool people. We've gotten a lot of consulting projects and revenue from it. And I think the things that we learned are so much different than what we kind of anticipated when we started out. So anyway, that's our case study. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions? This is where I walk around, yeah.
So generally, I've learned that when you're doing interview style things, that it's best to not give them the questions ahead of time. So how do you keep people from giving you super scripted responses when you send them the questions you're going to ask them ahead of time? Do you give them some instruction for that?
I don't. That's a great point. For me, I'm talking with like CEOs a lot of the time, and from my own experience, CEOs don't like to be surprised. And so for them, they're like, give me the questions. And I'm not going to fight that. So what I'll typically do is maybe like rephrase the questions. So I'm still kind of asking the same kind of thing, but not necessarily verbatim, so they can't give me like a super scripted response. Plus we do editing.
I think mostly CEOs, PR people don't like to not have the questions in advance, right?
In terms of the time box, is part of the time box including sending the copy of the video to the person you interviewed to get their permission to make sure that they're cool with it?
I never send them the video beforehand. I publish it and I send it to them afterwards. That's only burned us once. We made one claim and somebody asked us, because we mentioned one of their clients, to edit it without the mention of their clients because they didn't have permission. Since that point, we have not mentioned our guests' clients without their permission. I mean, this is the thing, we were moving fast, and so we can't afford to have all these different rules in place. We basically have to make a mistake, be really embarrassed one time, and then make a rule that kind of prevents us from doing that type of thing.
Well, talking about moving fast, like how many episodes do you have planned out, like right now, going forward?
3. So, and we've done 62 episodes, and so it's a little bit of a treadmill. Some days we've got a few more planned out, some days we have a few less.
Okay.
I'd have more if anybody wants to be a guest. Come see me, huh?
Who else wants to be a guest asking questions right now? All right. Oh, I do have one more? Yeah, okay.
Hello again, everyone. So just a quick question. So somebody from, I guess, like a startup perspective or who wants to get in the video content creation and everything, you mentioned how like 85% of the way that people will get their lessons are going to be through video in like 2025. Is that right?
That's what the stat said.
Okay. Hey, there you go. So, so in that case, there's always the issue of like oversaturation, and like with podcasts now, there's tending maybe this trend of like there's so many podcasts about like global trends, economics, and everything. So personally, like if you were to give advice to somebody who's going to start up within the next like 2 or 3 years in the video content realm, what is the next thing that you would say besides like the Google ads and everything that are pretty like that are working now, but maybe might be difficult in the future? What do you think would be the next iteration?
I mean, honestly, I swear it's the concept, or the format, or choosing a format. Because right now, what you're seeing is that video is exploding right now, but 95% of it's not actually an explosion of unique video content. It's an emulation of Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm at my office and I'm really gung-ho and let's grow and you can do it, that kind of stuff. And I'm walking into the office and I've got my AirPods and like it's visually it's inconsistent and it's monotonous. And so for us, even though there's a lot of people putting out better quality content than us, Ours is visually there. It's all the time. One of the biggest things about purchase is just simply familiarity. And so that's a huge aspect of brand that I think people underestimate. So they're bouncing from thing to thing to thing to thing, creating all sorts of videos, not creating any memorability or familiarity. For me, every time I come up on LinkedIn, you see the same exact layout. I'm sitting on the, this side of the screen. There's a picture in picture, or there's an interview. It's very recognizable. And I think if you really think about your favorite videos or the most iconic ones, I think about like Gary Vee, for example, or I think about Moz.com has Whiteboard Fridays. They've been doing that for like a decade. Those tend to get emulated because they're iconic, and so I think that's the best way to stand out. Pick like your favorite show or your favorite format and say, we're going to do this for these people, for our core audience.
All right, Josh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody. All right, thanks to Josh, thanks to Mickey, thanks to Eric and Cece. Coming up next, don't forget to save the date or register now, December 20th. That is a Friday at the end of December. We'll have Eric Hansen here to talk about brands being social, so definitely appreciate that. Thank you for coming, everybody, and have a good rest of your day. Have a great
I'll make a thing on it. Everybody, thanks for watching. Follow Skelly Video Productions or like us. You'll be able to see all these when they come up. We'll be here next December 20th. Ugly sweaters. Wear your ugly sweater for the Christmas season, or your honest ugly sweater. And let us know if you have any further questions. We can forward on to the hosts. Thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate the support. Let us know if there were any technical issues. And cheers. Happy Friday.